Jesus! Help me, Jewish God! Help me, Allah! Help me, Tom Cruise!
But how did he get down to his underwear that fast?
Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby was pitched to studios with just 6 words: Will Ferrell as a NASCAR driver. And as you might expect, that pitch resulted in a film packed with outrageous slapstick humor, ridiculous sight gags, and an ensemble of increasingly wacky characters played by some of the biggest names in comedy. But would you believe us if we told you that beneath all that insanity, Talladega Nights was also one of the greatest racing films of all time, as well as being one of the sharpest, smartest satires of its era?
Well, Dick, here's the deal. I'm the best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence.
Written by Will Ferrell and director Adam McKay, Talladega Nights is the story of a dopey, arrogant NASCAR driver named Ricky Bobby. Based on some misguided advice he receives as a boy from his good-for-nothing father, Ricky's motto is,
If you ain't first, you're last. You know what I'm talking about? That phrase is trademark, not to be used without permission of Ricky Bobby Inc.
And indeed, Ricky always comes in first. His record, however, is almost entirely based on the fact that his best friend and teammate, Cal Naughton Jr., played by John C. Reilly, is always willing to come in second, a sacrifice that Ricky doesn't seem to appreciate at all. Their winning relationship, which they refer to as shake and bake, is eventually derailed by the arrival of Sacha Baron Cohen's Jean Girard, a flamboyant French driver who seems to drive circles around Ricky at pretty much everything.
I got a message for all of them, right? Shake and bake.
What does that do? Does that blow your mind?
In his desperation to beat Girard, Ricky causes a disastrous crash and has something akin to a nervous breakdown right on the track in front of the whole world.
Oh my God, help me! I don't want to die!
The incident costs him his job, his reputation, his wife, his fortune, his best friend, and he ultimately finds himself living with his mother and working as a pizza delivery guy. Thanks, however, to the intervention of his father, as well as his former assistant and future love interest, Susan, a humbler and relatively wiser Ricky eventually decides to return to the sport that made him famous and fight his way back to the top. Talladega Nights was first and foremost a showcase for Will Ferrell, and given his style of comedy, it's not surprising that so much of the movie's humor is drawn from slapstick gags and clearly improvisational on-set riffing.
I'm Ricky Bobby. If you don't chew Big Red, then you.
And based on his roles in movies like Old School and Anchorman, it's equally unsurprising that Ferrell's character is another loud, idiotic man-child. But thanks to McKay's penchant for satire, in Talladega Nights, Ferrell's usual antics are put to far greater cinematic purpose than they ever were before. For starters, the movie functions as both an obvious parody of sports biopics and a loving send-up of stock car racing and NASCAR culture. According to Ferrell, when he and McKay reached out to the organization to discuss its possible involvement in the production, we were real adamant up front that our goal wasn't to make fun of NASCAR. We wanted to have fun with NASCAR. It was an important move because the whole NASCAR world was apparently still irked over its portrayal in the 1990 Tom Cruise vehicle, Days of Thunder. In fact, the earlier movie had left such a bad taste in everyone's mouth that with the exceptions of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jamie McMurray, who have small cameos in the finished film, no actual drivers or racing teams would agree to participate in the production of Talladega Nights. Nonetheless, NASCAR agreed to cooperate, and it was through that relationship that Ferrell and McKay became privy to all the real-life racing concerns and inside jokes that helped make the world of the film feel so authentic and lived in. The NASCAR satire is also the basis of some of the movie's funniest gags, like the fake advertisements Ricky stars in, as well as the relentless product placement, which turns up everywhere from the windshield of his car to the prayers he says over his dinner table.
Also, due to a binding endorsement contract that stipulates I mention Powerade at each grace, I just want to say that Powerade is delicious.
The movie then milks its NASCAR action for all the drama it's worth by taking the racing aspects of the film seriously. Or at least seriously enough. Yes, Ricky wins a race by driving backwards, and yes, the actors spout off jokes non-stop throughout the driving sequences, but when it came to filming those sequences, McKay insisted on incorporating top-tier stunt work into the action and shooting at least part of the film on the real-life racetrack at Talladega. He even sent Ferrell and the cast for race car driving lessons at the Richard Petty driving experience. Ferrell would later suggest that that experience was terrifying, and compared to the scene in the movie where a shaken-up Ricky thinks he's going fast, but he's really only going 25 miles per hour. But it was worth it. The end result is a movie that prompted Variety to say McKay gets the grit, heat, and feel of NASCAR racetracks with a near-documentary sensibility, and at least one racing journalist to call Talladega Nights the most accurate racing film ever. But legitimate racing action wasn't the only trick the duo had up their sleeve, because while preparing to make the movie, Ferrell and McKay quickly realized that the topic of NASCAR was a divisive one. According to McKay, we'd mention it to people and they'd have two responses, either "I hate NASCAR" or "NASCAR is awesome." The two realized they were headed into what McKay would later describe as the epicenter of red state culture. But rather than shy away, they evidently decided to lean into those aspects and create a full-blown satire of them. And to that end, Ricky Bobby, who Ferrell imbues with more than a bit of his famous George W. Bush impression, starts off as the embodiment of that particular slice of America. Seen through this lens, it becomes clear why Ricky's life being disrupted by the arrival of a gay European is no coincidence. In fact, it goes directly to the heart of Ricky's character arc, since in McKay's own words, the living nightmare for a red state NASCAR driver would be a gay French driver. The fact that driver is played by Baron Cohen is also not likely a coincidence, as McKay has expressed great admiration for Borat, which he's described as a really subversive and sophisticated assault on American culture. Ricky tries in vain to defend America's achievements to Gerard and eventually attacks him out of frustration, only to see Gerard easily get the upper hand. Gerard offers to spare Ricky if he'll say he loves crepes, but even after it's established that Ricky does, in fact, love them, he refuses to say so because, in his view,
"You don't understand liberty. You don't understand freedom. So you put a crack in my arm like the crack in the Liberty Bell."
Ricky's pig-headed defiance ends badly for him, and the confrontation is what will ultimately start his journey to becoming a slightly better person. By the time the film ends, Ricky even grows enough to allow himself to plant a kiss on Gerard that was memorable enough to win Ferrell and Baron Cohen the Best Kiss trophy at the 2007 MTV Movie Awards. It's a journey the audience is willing to take because the movie makes it clear that when you peel back the layers of his bravado, Ricky is really a broken man who longs for family and stability. But the movie is, nonetheless, an assault on the American culture of the early aughts, every bit as subversive and sophisticated as the one in Borat. Even more impressive, perhaps, is that satire is accomplished purely through the storytelling and character work. The movie is never allowed to become condescending or didactic, and it never stops to lecture its audience, unless it's doing so in service of getting laughs. Making a film that held such a critical mirror up to such a wide swath of the public was certainly a risk, but Talladega Nights doesn't seem to have suffered for it at the box office. It was #1 in its first weekend, the top-grossing live-action comedy of 2006, and the biggest opening of Ferrell's career until the release of the Lego Movie in 2014. It also happens to be one of director Christopher Nolan's favorite movies of all time. Today, Talladega Nights is widely regarded as the best of Ferrell and McKay's several cinematic partnerships, as well as one of the most quotable comedies of all time.
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
Be good just to hold them down by your side. Yeah, great.
No doubt, a great deal of the credit for all the success has to go to the antics of Ferrell and the rest of the cast. But our point here is that those antics only really worked as well as they did because of the way the movie grounded them with legitimately cinematic sports action and a willingness to honestly engage with all aspects of the world it portrayed. In other words, the reason Talladega Nights works so well and still holds up today is that it grabbed a hold of that line between speed and chaos, wrestled it to the ground like a demon cobra, and rode it like a skeleton through the gates of hell. So, what do you think? Are you a fan of Talladega Nights? And do you think it holds up? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely find others you like if you check out the rest of the channel. As always, thank you for subscribing to Nerdstalgic.